Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Nick. This week I wanted to build a photo frame holder for pictures of my kids. Those of you that have kids, you know that kids grow like weeds. So I wanted something that the pictures could just be popped in and popped out in, well, just frankly a couple seconds. Let me show you how I made it. I decided to make the project out of hardboard because I kind of figured I was going to paint it black just so that the photos were the highlight. So I began with the hardboard pieces and I just cut off the end to a piece of scrap. That was going to act as my end pieces later. Then I could switch my table saw blade to 45 degrees and I cut a 45-degree bevel on both of the edges of the long piece of hardboard that was remaining. I could then put my table saw blade back to 90 degrees and I just ripped the edges that I beveled off on either side. And I didn't really even measure at this point. It was approximately 3/4 of an inch. This is a nice project if you don't really want to measure a whole lot. I could then temporarily clamp one of the pieces in place, and then with a photo, in my case a 4x6, I could just kind of adjust that other piece and get a good feel for how much curvature there was going to be to the photograph itself. Then I could mark that, and I took that measurement over to the table saw and I ripped it to that width. Then bringing my pieces that had a 45-degree bevel on their edge, I took those to the sliding compound miter saw and I cut 45 degrees on each of those ends to, I guess, give it more of a mitered look in case the joints were going to show. I wasn't necessarily planning on this because I was going to paint it, but you never know. I then put a very small amount of glue on those top and bottom pieces and spread that around with my finger. I didn't want to have a whole lot of squeeze out, especially towards the 45-degree bevel portion, because that was just going to get messy to try and have to clean that out. So just use a small amount of glue here and that should serve you just fine. Then you can go ahead and add some clamps, make sure that everything's nice and flush on the edge itself, and then just wait for that to dry. If you get any squeeze out on the outside, just take a damp rag and wipe that up. If you get any squeeze out on the inside towards that bevel, just take like a dry acid brush, and that way you can smooth all that glue out, and it's not going to necessarily be as noticeable when we go to finish it later. The piece of hardboard that we cut off in the very beginning, I just ripped that to the exact same width as the top and bottom portion, and then I marked a 45-degree end and just cut that by hand. And then I could kind of sneak up on the cut with a chisel and make sure that there's a nice mitered joint and it was a real nice tight joint. And then as far as mounting options, I just drilled a couple holes to accept a couple screws later on. Like I had mentioned earlier, I was planning on painting this, but my original plan was to make this out of maple, which would be perfectly fine, and that would look nice too. You could just clear coat some maple. But I already had the hardboard that was to the thickness that I wanted, and I figured then I could paint it black, and then the photos that I put into the holder would actually end up being the highlighted section, and then the black frame itself would be a little bit more subdued. Then using some black spray paint, I got the edges and a little bit of the back. That way if it hung away from the wall, you weren't going to see raw hardboard. Then it was just a matter of flipping it over, and then I could spray into all the nooks and crannies and get the front. I put on about 2 coats of black paint at this point. Once the spray paint had dried, then I could just put on 2 coats of satin lacquer to give it a little bit more protection. Then just using a couple screws, I just screwed right into the drywall. I didn't even worry about hitting the studs or anything like that. This thing can't be but a pound or so, and it's not going to get any type of abuse, so it's just, one of those projects. Probably one of the very few projects I've ever just screwed right into the drywall without any anchors, but I think it'll be just fine. Well, there you go. A quick and easy little photo holder. I just picked 4 random photos here. Another thing to keep in mind, you can go longer with this and you can get more photos in. In fact, if you put them tighter or closer together, you could probably fit a couple more, in a shorter distance as well. And, if I hold this real still, if I work my editing magic, let's see if I can do this, you could also double them up. You would just want to make sure that at that point, you'd have this center section would have a bevel, 45-degree bevel on both sides. But you could double it, triple it, quadruple it. Heck, you could make a big old 4x4 sheet of just kind of a photo holder, which would be really neat. But like I said, my reasoning behind this was my kids are they grow like weeds. And it seems like by the time I get a photo behind glass, there's another photo of them looking way different. And this is just going to be one of those cool, pop them in, pop them out, and that way we can at least stay somewhat current on my kids' growth and all that good stuff. If you guys like videos like this, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and hit that like button if you liked it. Well, until I see you guys next time, you guys take care. Oh, almost fell off my stool. There you go. That could have been a blooper. There you go.
That's just classic you.
Oh my gosh. I don't even have to try that hard.